Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, another threat to California's coast, a massive oil slick polluting marine habitats and ocean water. How much oil was spilled by this broken pipeline?
The California Medical Association is the first in the nation to withdraw its opposition to an assisted suicide bill. But it's not outright support. I'm Peggy Pico with the debate over right-to-die laws. Then, making money with art, how a new business model developed in San Diego aims to help people avoid being starving artists.
It just didn't make sense that we would do anything that would affect youth at our YMCA.
Changes at the YMCA for kids and how it may have led to a leadership shakeup. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Way more oil than expected. The Coast Guard is still trying to figure out tonight exactly how much oil has leaked from a ruptured pipeline near Santa Barbara. Up to 105,000 gallons have spread so far. 2 oil slicks floating off the coast now stretches nearly 9 miles. The broken onshore pipeline spewed oil down a storm drain yesterday and into the Pacific Ocean. It took crews several hours to shut off the line.
The beach was just covered in thick black crude. The rocks were covered, the waves that were coming in were just black oil.
Crews are cleaning up the mess by Refugio State Beach. Plains All-American Pipeline owns the broken pipeline. Now, the Wall Street Journal says California's Attorney General is working with the Santa Barbara County DA to see if any laws have been violated. There is a new pact with the Golden State and world leaders in the battle against climate change. Governor Jerry Brown signed the deal yesterday, agreeing to work to reduce greenhouse emissions. The deal outlines a plan to bring down emissions to below 1990 levels by the year 2050. This comes ahead of a UN summit on climate change. San Diego's Marine Corps Air Station Miramar is being touted as a national model for cutting its fuel oil consumption by 98% last year, with 35% of its energy now coming from renewable sources like methane. The base is home to about 10,000 service members and their families. Miramar wants to be energy independent within 4 years, building a mini microgrid to power the entire flight line. EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy took a tour and honored the base with the government's Green Challenge Award.
This is not their line of work, but they've made it their line of work, and I can't thank them enough because the nation is watching here in California, and we know that California is enduring 4 years of drought and experiencing one of the driest periods in California's history. Meanwhile, this base has stepped up.
Miramar has been using reclaimed water since 2007 with a goal to reduce its waste to zero by 2020. MCAS had the greatest energy savings of more than 400 military bases nationwide. The YMCA in Encinitas has ousted board member Elizabeth Ecke. She's the granddaughter of the Y's namesake. KPBS investigative reporter Meetha Sharma says Ecke was asked to leave after she questioned a policy change she believed would cut off thousands of kids from recreation programs.
Lisbeth Ecke hails from the family that earned a fortune by making poinsettias famous as a Christmas plant. In 1963, her father Paul founded the YMCA branch in Encinitas.
We grew up, my brother, sister, and myself grew up being at the Y, being involved with the Y. I mean, it was just a big part of our life.
Ecke's father recruited Raleigh Ayers to be the first executive director. His son Bob served with Lisbeth on the board.
This house right behind me was the first YMCA building. I used to skateboard up and down these streets with my brothers. I worked for the YMCA. I mowed its lawns, Back when I was in high school, I was a camp counselor, and then I was a day camp director.
Nowadays, Ayers and Ecke no longer sit on the Ecke Y Board of Management. They were asked to temporarily resign earlier this year after they wrote a letter to YMCA higher-ups about changes they say betray the Y's calling. Chief among them is the elimination of youth membership discounts. For about $80 to $100 a year, Ayers says youth discounts gave kids access to programs like swimming, gymnastics, and martial arts at membership prices. Under the new rules, children can't join the Y without being part of a family membership at a cost of about $1,000 annually. Ayers believes the change will drive away many of the 2,400 kids who have youth membership discounts at the Ecke Y.
Youth is a very fundamental part of the mission of the YMCA. It always has been. So philosophically, it just didn't make sense that we would do anything that would affect youth.
Ayers projected the Ecke Y could lose as much as $1.7 million annually if kids with youth membership discounts don't join the Y with their families. Ayers says he's asked YMCA CEO Baron Hurtle and Doherty for analysis and projections on how many kids in youth memberships will convert to family memberships at other Ys across the county, but has received no answers. The change takes effect this month in Encinitas. All of the other Ys in the county eliminated youth memberships last July. Hurtle and Doherty told KPBS in December, business is good.
Today, after 4 months of operation, with the new strategy and all the branches except one, and they'll come on board next July, that participation is up 8% countywide in membership and program. If I wanted to put a number on that, that's about 10,000 more people.
But it's not clear where new memberships are coming from. Some new Ys have opened. Between November of 2012 and November of 2013, nearly 12,000 new families joined the Y countywide before the new policy took effect. KPBS asked for a breakdown of family membership increases by branch, but was denied. Hurtle and Doherty declined to speak to us again since Ecke and Ayers sent the letter to the Y's corporate board, expressing concern some youth members would be cut out by the new, more costly policy. But in a written statement, he said, quote, "It is unfortunate but understandable that two former board members were not fully knowledgeable about the strategic direction of the YMCA of San Diego County. We are proud of our efficient, transparent, and sound fiscal policies and practices." Hurtle and Doherty said in December the Y offers financial assistance to eligible families if the switch from youth membership discounts to a full family membership is too expensive.
It's a little bit insulting to apply for financial assistance for a dance class. It doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense, and if I can't afford to take my daughter to a dance class, then I'm going to go elsewhere. I'm not going to ask somebody for a donation for my cause. Hold on tight, 2 hands.
Lauren King got her 5-year-old daughter Sydney a youth membership discount 2 years ago for tumble and dance classes. Today, King takes her daughter to the park near the Ecke Y. She says her daughter probably won't return to the Y for dance because she can't afford to join through a family membership. And it's unclear if Lisbeth Ecke and Bob Ayers will ever return to the Encinitas Y in a leadership capacity. They had hoped their January letter to the board's more than 4 dozen members would trigger somebody to respond.
But nobody did. Well, that's not true. I heard from 2 board members who responded and said, "I'm no longer on the board."
Ecke and Ayers say they were asked to resign by the Ecke Y executive director after they could not guarantee they wouldn't voice disagreement and ask questions again.
Everybody I know in Encinitas has some connection to that YMCA. And these are not outrageous questions. There were no accusations made in the letter. There were no blaming. We're just asking questions. And by golly, the training that I got, the mentorship I had, and I think Elizabeth had with our fathers who built this Y, is you're entitled to ask good questions. And you ask them of the people who can give you answers. And we did.
Ayers and Ecke say too much was at stake for kids to remain silent. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
By the way, the youth membership that was eliminated applies to kids 12 and under. KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. A county supervisor is under investigation by the district attorney's office. 4 employees accuse Supervisor Dave Roberts of improprieties. They resigned over a 3-week span. Roberts responded today with this statement. His spokesman says, quote, "We are confident that the false allegations that have been made by a former employee will be proven to be untrue," end quote. The California Medical Association has dropped its opposition to what's been known as physician-assisted suicide. It's the first state medical group in the nation to do so. CMA says it's now neutral on a controversial bill to allow terminally ill patients to end their lives with doctor-prescribed drugs. In a statement, the CMA says its focus has historically been on improving end-of-life options and enhancing palliative care and hospice for patients who are terminally ill. Ultimately, it's up to the patient and their physician to choose the course of treatment best suited for the situation. CMA's new position on physician aid in dying allows for that. Peggy Pico talks with a San Diego doctor about the aid in dying debate.
Right to Die advocates recently filed a lawsuit in San Diego Superior Court to allow medically assisted suicide in California. Christy O'Donnell, one of the 3 plaintiffs in the suit, is a single mother who says she's never smoked but is dying from terminal lung and brain cancer.
The most likely way that I'm going to die with the lung cancer is that my left lung will fill with fluid. I'll start drowning in my own fluid. If I get to a hospital, they'll very painfully put a tube in. They'll drain the fluid from my lung, only to patch me up, send me home, and wait until the next time my lung fills up with fluid, and then I'll continue to repeat that process of drowning painfully until I die.
Another plaintiff in the suit is my guest, Dr. Lynette Cederquist, a specialist in internal medicine, hospice, and palliative care. And Dr. Cederquist, briefly tell us the basis of this lawsuit.
The basis of the lawsuit is that we want to reverse what's in the law currently in California that prohibits an individual from aiding another person in committing suicide, so that this would allow people the choice of having some aid in dying, which we distinguish from people who are committing suicide.
Sure, and right now, what does the law allow for?
Legally, as far as end-of-life choices, it does allow for withdrawal of life-sustaining treatment once it's clear that the person is not going to survive. It also allows for terminal sedation for patients that are suffering at the end of life and we can't alleviate their suffering despite maximal palliative care, hospice care, that we have the choice to sedate them.
Why did you want to join the lawsuit?
Because of my experiences for my 20 years as a physician working with terminally ill patients and seeing that there are some cases in which, despite maximizing our palliative care, hospice care, patients still suffer unnecessarily at the end.
Is there a particular patient that stands out in your mind that's an example of that?
There was one woman I cared for a couple years ago who had been treated for ovarian cancer for 10 years and had endured it, but at the end she was frail, bedbound, completely dependent. She had open sores. We couldn't alleviate her pain. She was miserable. She finally asked to be sedated at home with her family, and hospice was reluctant to even do that, I think because they were fearful of being viewed as committing euthanasia, and I felt that she had another 2 weeks of suffering that could have been prevented, and that always has stayed with me.
The Disability Rights Education Defense Fund opposes medically assisted suicide, and they sent us this statement in response to the California Medical Association's new neutral position on the matter that reads in part, the AMA and both associations of California oncologists continue to oppose SB 128. Assisted suicide is a deadly mix with our broken, profit-driven healthcare system and puts elders and people with disabilities at great risk. Now, what is your response, doctor, to concerns that right-to-die laws could lead to coercion or abuse of vulnerable populations like elderly, disabled, or terminally ill patients?
Well, I understand the fear that people have that that could happen, but I think Oregon has disproved those arguments. They've had similar law in place for 17 years, and tracking the data, these things just have not happened in the 17 years that their law has been in place.
Are there safeguards, or does this lawsuit, with this law, the SB 128, have safeguards?
Absolutely. It really mandates that a patient who's requesting aid in dying has to be evaluated by 2 physicians to determine that they are indeed terminally ill and that there is no coercion, and that they're making a free choice and that they have the ability to make that decision. So there are plenty of safeguards.
Well, Oregon is one of 5 states that have a so-called death with dignity law. New Mexico's legislation is actually being appealed right now by the state's attorney general there. But 10 states have recently defeated similar measures. So why do you think this lawsuit will lead to change as far as end-of-life options and care in California?
Well, I think the time has come for California, and I think the case of Brittany Maynard has brought this forth because she was in California and she had to move to Oregon to have access to aid in dying. And the majority of Californians are in support of this, the majority of the population, the majority of physicians, and I think that our state is really ready for this legislation.
And you say the majority, is that what you're hearing from patients, or where are you hearing that a lot of people support this?
Both. There's surveys out there showing that 2/3 of Californians support this, and I do talk to patients and I talk to colleagues, and the majority of the people that I talk to myself are also in support.
I see. Dr. Lynette Cederquist, thank you so much.
Thank you.
New research suggests the immune system of babies born to obese mothers is compromised. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg joins us from our North County Bureau. Kenny, what does the UC Riverside study tell us that we didn't already know?
Well, Dwayne, we've long known that babies born to obese mothers have a higher risk of birth defects, have a higher risk of developing diabetes, and even of developing obesity as they grow older. What this study reveals is that maternal obesity may be linked to a baby's weakened immune system.
And how did they reach that conclusion?
Well, UC Riverside researchers wanted to find out how early they could detect signs of a damaged immune system. So they studied the umbilical cord blood from 39 mothers that were split into 3 groups. One group of mothers was very lean upon becoming pregnant. The second group was of normal weight when they became pregnant. And the third group of women were very obese.
So 39 mothers tested. What did they find?
What they found is that the babies of obese mothers had a smaller number of 3 specific types of white blood cells. And these white blood cells protect the body against infections and parasites. And what researchers theorize is that these babies, as they grow older, may have trouble fighting off infections and being fully protected by vaccines.
And Kenny, what do UC Riverside researchers say is the next step in this process?
Well, they say the next step is to do a much larger study of many more children and to follow them as they grow into a young childhood to see if they actually develop any of these problems that they're predicting.
KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg. Helping creative minds survive as artists, Peggy Pico explains how they can make a living by following their passion.
The starving artist scenario is familiar to many, but there are ways to make a living doing what you love as a painter, sculptor, filmmaker, or other type of artist. Joining me to talk about a business model for artists is SDSU accounting lecturer John Baumunk and Patrick Stillman, painter, photographer, and founder of the Studio Door, an arts incubator in North Park. Now, John, from a business point of view, what are the major challenges in getting an artist to use a business model to promote their creative work?
Well, a business model, I think, is composed of 3 different parts that are main features of all business models, and that is the accounting side, the legal side, and the marketing side. First of all, the artists need to market their product, and in order to do so, they need to find an audience, a following, somebody who will actually purchase it and give them money for it. In addition, artists can also try to get grants. And funding that way is certainly viable for artists, because what artists are selling is not necessarily something that makes money. It's something that also has value beyond what it brings in terms of money. The legal side protects the artist's intellectual property, and the accounting side helps the artists keep track of and control their costs.
And this is all part of this business plan. But Patrick, as a painter and owner of Studio Door, and you've created this arts incubator, how do you help other artists avoid this starving artist cliche?
Well, I learned very quickly when I was doing my own experience, committing to my art 10 years ago, that there is no real path for an artist to succeed. And so the Studio Door is kind of a culmination of learning things about, you know, how do you price your art? How do you interact with galleries? And all these questions that artists who love to create don't necessarily have the skills for.
Now, John, you were saying that you thought it was essential that artists have a business model. How would it be different from someone who's not an artist?
Well, art isn't something that necessarily is intended to make money per se. It's an expression. Artists are expressing themselves. It should be something that's true to the artist's identity, what they perceive and what they think about themselves and the world around them. And also, art has value beyond, it has value as something that people like to look at, people like to listen to. So it's not just about making money for the artist, it's something more.
And you mentioned briefly what the artist business plan might include. How hard is it to get them to buy into that? Or are you finding that artists are saying, yeah, no, I need some help here?
I think at some level the artists know that they need help, but I think that artists have sometimes had negative encounters with business or with things like accounting and numbers and certainly legal ideas and lawyers. And so the idea, I think, is to get the artists to view themselves as entrepreneurs in a sense, and also harness the creative aspects of what artists do, because entrepreneurs are also very creative people, and that's why I think artists can be also very good entrepreneurs.
I'm seeing Patrick nod and kind of smile at this. Now, artists are often self-described kind of loners who crave a solitude to create their products. So how do you encourage them to network and share ideas?
Well, I think the very first thing I tell artists is that if you're alone in your studio or at home creating art, you're never going to get an audience to actually hear what you're creating and your message. And so I've tried to offer them tools to help them succeed in doing that. And part of that's this entrepreneurial road of learning how to market themselves and learning some of those basic business essential skills.
Now, do you think it's really possible in today's world of digital art being easily accessible and sometimes cheaper online? Do you think it's possible to make a good living as an artist?
It certainly is. You might have to work a little bit harder at getting your following, because anybody can put something up on YouTube, for example. But at the same time, if it has something of value that connects with people and you start to develop a following, much the same way that there was a big following for the Grateful Dead in their heyday, then you can establish that group of people that wants to purchase what you're producing.
And Patrick, so what can a local artist do if they want to be involved in the art incubator or learn more about this entrepreneurial art type of lifestyle? Well,
they can certainly contact me at the Studio Door. We're at www.thestudiodoor.com. And we have two different aspects that they can engage in. One is programming. We're doing shows and exhibitions that aren't necessarily happening in San Diego. And then secondly, we have instruction on the art to market to really build those basic skills.
And we have more information on our website, kpbs.org. Patrick Stillman and John Baumonk, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going beyond free-range meat, there's a new lunch menu at Crawford High School in City Heights. KPBS reporter Megan Burks explains why a halal meal was an easy sell for educators.
Walk the halls of Crawford High School and you'll see City Heights in miniature. The neighborhood is home to immigrants from Mexico, Southeast Asia, and East Africa. Several years ago, a group of refugee moms from the community began telling San Diego Unified's food service director Gary Patil their kids weren't eating lunch.
All students here eat for free. So you have to ask yourself, why weren't they eating with us before?
The food wasn't halal. Muslims follow religious rules similar to kosher dietary laws for meat and dairy. So earlier this year, Crawford began offering a halal chicken bowl twice a week.
It's a free-range, Mary's free-range, vegetarian-fed, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, organic chicken that you find in Whole Foods.
Patil says the pilot program was an easy sell to educators.
So if students are eating, they can learn. If they don't eat, they can't learn.
Patil says since the cafeteria began serving the new chili lime chicken bowl, 300 students who previously did not eat school lunches are lining up at the cafeteria. He says the increased participation covers the few extra cents each organic drumstick costs. And he says some of the students getting in line aren't even Muslim. 17-year-old Rosa Duarte joined her Muslim friends in the campaign for halal school lunches.
I normally would not eat at school because the food options were not good, but with the halal chicken drumstick bowl, I actually am eating at school, and so I have more energy to go through the day and then go to my sports afterwards.
Crawford parent Mariam Ali says she's noticed a big change in her son when he gets home on halal lunch days.
Before he says something, I have to put food on the table for him to say. I say, okay, how was your day today? I'm hungry and I didn't eat the food. I have to prepare food for him when he comes home. I know he's starving.
And now?
He grab some snacks, cracker or cookies, and, he just started doing his homework.
Ali says she wants to see the pilot program extend into next year and expand to other schools in the area. Patil says there's a good chance it will. Calculus students at Crawford have been collecting data on the program to share with school administrators. Patil says the early results look good. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.